Here's one you won't see in the mainstream media. That's because they're too busy proving how diverse they are. For example, like the Herald report on these guys. Not only does this couple qualify for the Indigenous Victimhood group, which you can see by the virtue signalling native cloak, but they're also the first men in New Zealand to become pregnant and give birth to a baby. You just can't make this stuff up. So while the mainstream media has been preoccupied with reporting on diversity victimised children, the following story may have escaped your attention. First, let's have some context. In New Zealand's general elections at the end of last year, the radical far-left political parties took an absolute grubbing. Everyone knew the left would be gone. Ardern, the most hated woman in New Zealand, who I simply refused to address by her completely undeserved honorific title, she resigned and fled into exile overseas.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.
The voters delivered an unequivocal rejection of the toxic blend of Marxism and narcissism, aka Ardernism, that will forever blight New Zealand's political history. The people of New Zealand demanded and maintained the demand for a return to democracy founded on the rule of law and the protection of fundamental human rights. The Stasi commander of Ardern's regime, Andy Costa, has been shuffled off by the new government to somewhere where he can be controlled and prevented from doing any further harm. Nevertheless, the radical left-wing ideologues entrenched in our police service and Crown Law Office remain in positions of power and persist with their ambitions to control our thinking and speaking. Their latest victim was Paul Burns. In March this year, Paul was doing his usual gig, encouraging public debate on his pro-life views. In our capital city, Wellington, the heart of political power, Burns stood on Lambton Quay holding a sign that said $100 to the first person who proves that slavery is more evil than abortion, with $100 worth of notes taped to the sign to prove his assault. And Burns was approached by a group of young people willing to engage in the debate, and one of them argued that abortion was justified due to human overpopulation. So yeah, that's the argument, that there's too many people. Now, debating 101 includes reasoning by analogy, and that is using a different fact pattern to test the validity of a stated principle. In this case, this involves taking the proposition that extinguishing unborn human life is justified by overpopulation and asking whether any other human life can be extinguished by the same justification. In the pro-life camp, this is a common logical argument, and it's about refuting any moral distinction between intra- and extrauterine human life. Burns went straight for the jugular by turning the debater's logic around and asking the question under the same principle: if you think that the world is overpopulated, then why don't you unalive yourself? This is YouTube, so unalive wasn't the actual word used. You get the point. Now, someone probably with blue hair and face piercings who disagreed with Burns' view videoed his debating and telephoned the police. They arrived and Burns was taken into custody, taken to the police cells, and charged under Section 14B of the Summary Offences Act for offensive language. Honestly, you just can't make this up. I'm serious, that's actually what happened. So Burns pleaded not guilty, but get this, ahead of his trial, police upgraded his charges to disorderly behaviour likely to cause other people to behave violently. Now, what I find really striking about the upgrade of the charges is that the police would have had to prove that the person with whom Burns was debating was reasonably likely to behave violently. If that's not a sad indictment on radical left ideology, I don't know what is. The police are in substance saying that if Burns presents a paradox to these lefties that they can't reconcile to their own narrative and they react violently, then he's criminally responsible for triggering their violence. If convicted, Burns could have endured jail time, all for just engaging in a debate. This whole case is a serious breach of Burns' freedom of speech, and for that reason alone, the police officer who went along with being the informant on the charging document is, in my view, either utterly incompetent or completely ideologically compromised. That officer should be stood down immediately. But wait, there's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that not only was Burns charged, but once again the police served this charge for 8 months, putting Burns through the anxiety of New Zealand's draconian criminal justice system. Within days of Burns being charged, the file would have been in the hands of a specialist prosecutor who would have immediately understood that the charge was hopeless. Nevertheless, they continued to surf the prosecution for another 8 months. And this whole fiasco would have cost at least $250,000 in taxpayer funds. And this modus operandi is a common tactic used by the police. If you went through the cases before the courts, at any given time I suggest that you would find at least 20% of them are what I call coercion cases. The function of a coercion case is to take a hopeless prosecution and keep the victim entangled in the machinations of the criminal justice system, with the hope that their mental health will be so compromised that they'll be worn down over time and plead guilty before ever going to trial. And many innocent victims do just that. They capitulate just to get their life back. This prosecution surfing is a reprehensible tactic, and it's one that I regret to report is known and facilitated by members of the judiciary. And it's incredibly rare for anyone subjected to this kind of abuse of the criminal justice system to ever recover their costs or their trust and confidence in the police or the judiciary. In this instance, if the Burns did not have the free legal representation from the Free Speech Union, it's almost certain that the police would have carried on through the trial, knowing with near 100% confidence that they would lose, but also knowing that they would punish Burns, in any case, with legal expenses. It's the fine that you get when you don't get a fine. It's the punishment you receive being found not guilty. And this is a disgraceful state of the New Zealand police. They have in effect become New Zealand's largest, most well-financed organised criminal group. It operates along with the Crown Law Office and the activist judiciary as the political machinery of radical far-left ideology. It has to stop. The attack on free speech and the misuse of the criminal justice system needs to be urgently addressed by our elected representatives. The election was insufficient to purge our public service of Ardernism. Now, I don't want to get all American, but we too, down in New Zealand, need to drain the swamp. Democracy, the rule of law, human rights, is not rocket science. We've done it all before. I think all opinions are up for debate. What do you think? Let me know. I read all of the comments you leave, and no matter what you say, I won't be reporting you to the police for disagreeing with me or expressing your opinion. Thanks for watching. Give us a like, would you? And click subscribe to be notified of new content as it drops. See you next time.